Well, today is hump day on the calendar. It's also hump day in my Seahawks draft positional rankings. These are my top 5 at each position, not the top 5 players that I feel like are just the best players at their position, but the top 5 that are attainable to the Seahawks, that fit the Seahawks, and that I like. Today, we're doing inside linebackers and running backs. This is Seahawks Forever.
Welcome to the Seahawks Forever podcast. In-depth analysis on everything Seahawks. And now, here's your host, Dan Viens.
Let's get you over to shopdoer.com. Doer is built for doing. Lifestyle apparel for every occasion. My favorite clothing manufacturer. It's spelled D-U-E-R, and you guys are going to love this stuff. Everything that they do is made from sustainably sourced materials. Everything is antibacterial and breathable, and these are the best jeans you're ever going to wear. They are light, they're stretchy, 20% stretch woven into the fabric. They move with you. They feel like joggers, but don't get it wrong. These are tough jeans. You can do anything in these things. There is no job that is too tough for these jeans. They are built for doing. And right now, you're going to get 20% off your first order if you go to this URL, shopdoer.com/forever. That's shopdoer.com/forever for 20% off your first order. And thank you to the folks at Doer for sponsoring the program. You sponsor the program every time you watch it. That's the best thing you can do to help the YouTube algorithm, is just watch the show and continue watching it. Hopefully, I've created compelling enough content for you to do that. Also, you can hit that thumbs up. You can subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and hit the bell for notification of future episodes. All the other ways that you might want to help support the channel in a more literal way, tangible way, those are all linked down below in the description as well. So up until this point, we have done both trenches on both sides of the line of scrimmage, interior offensive line and offensive tackles. We've done defensive linemen and edge players. We continue to do one defensive position and one offensive position. So today we're going to do running backs. We'll finish with them because it's an interesting position on this roster and where this Seahawks team sits right now. And it's one that I think presents the most intrigue as we lead up to this draft. But let's start with inside linebacker. I think the interesting thing about this pairing of these two position groups is you can make the case with both of these that the Seahawks don't need to draft one very high. We don't need an inside linebacker. We brought Ernest Jones back on a really team-friendly deal. Like, he just wanted to be here. And he was a transformative player last year when he arrived in trade from the Tennessee Titans. And then the first-year rookie last year in Tyrese Knight, and how good he looked, how comfortable he looked once he was inserted into the starting lineup after they released Terrell Dodson. And that pairing looks to be one. I mean, Ernest Jones is on his second contract now. He's still just 25 years old. So this could be the foundation of that inside linebacker room for years to come. And the staff really likes Drake Thomas in his third year now, another year removed from a pretty serious knee injury. They really love him, especially above the shoulders. Very smart player. And he can play Mike and Will. And so right now he's the third guy, and he can back up at either spot. But it's pretty thin after that. And we also know that Mike McDonald in his history has played at times 3 linebackers. And so I think there's an opportunity on the roster for a third player that is not only a guy that can back up both spots. I think that would really be ideal. Someone that's maybe bigger, longer, a little bit more of an elite athlete than Drake Thomas. Or you could make the case that just getting a third guy that's a really great coverage linebacker would be a good addition to this team as well, because he could play on nickel and dime and third downs. And there is one player on my list that fits that mold really, really well. But I want to try to expand your view as well with the first player on my list. I've talked about him on the show, so if you've watched before, this shouldn't come as too much of a shock to you. Someone that has a different skill set and has some versatility. We know how much Mike Macdonald loves to use those chess pieces. I talked about it with the edge group yesterday and how he used Malik Harrison in Baltimore. And he was an off-ball linebacker at Ohio State, right? But he also had some length and he had some ability off the edge, and he was able to use him in both those spots. Well, that's where we're going to start. And so right off the top, Jiahyad Campbell, Alabama. And the intriguing thing about Campbell is I had dismissed the idea of drafting an inside linebacker on day 1 or 2 for all the reasons I just explained. I mean, they're set there in the starting lineup. And then early in the draft process, a couple of big national mock drafts. I think one was Matt Miller, and I think the other one was Lance Zierlein. Matt Miller, ESPN, Lance Zierlein, NFL.com. Came out and mocked Jiahyad Campbell to the Seahawks at 18. And I thought, wait a minute. Are they assuming that Ernest Jones isn't going to resign? Because this was before that happened. This was early in the process. And I just thought, well, they don't need an inside linebacker. But then, and that was the reaction that I got from many of you as well. Once I opened my eyes to it and started mocking him and playing around with scenarios where I had Jiahyad Campbell going first. And the first time I put a mock draft out there with Campbell at 18, my goodness, I took a lot of trash online. I was called names. I was told how dumb I was. But here's the thing about Jiahyad Campbell. 6'3", 235, a very, very similar athletic production and just his overall profile coming out of college that Micah Parsons had. Remember, Micah Parsons at Penn State played off-ball linebacker. Dan Quinn, and they even, at the beginning of his career in Dallas, they just assumed that's where they were going to play him. And then Dan Quinn decided to make him an edge player full-time, and look what's happened. They're not exactly the same physically. Campbell actually has longer arms. He has a better 10-yard split than Micah Parsons. They have identical jump numbers. Like the explosive testing is very similar. He's just a very good all-around player. He's longer than a typical inside linebacker. And he's really good at everything. He has excellent grades from PFF as a run defender, a coverage player, and a pass rusher. So good in coverage that many scouts believe that that's where he could thrive early in his career, even if he doesn't have a full-time starting spot. And the other thing that's really cool is this kid just turned 21 years old. Like, he has just begun. You see on tape sometimes the instincts, he's just a half step slow to react. There's some scouts that think if you did the Parsons thing and moved him full-time to edge, you could really unlock a dynamic pass rusher. And so that's why I can see it fitting, because I can see Mike Macdonald as the mad scientist looking at Campbell and just salivating at all the things he can do with him. He could be your fifth edge, right? We talked about how, when we talked about the edge guys yesterday, like the one thing that's lacking, and it's a very good edge group provided everybody's healthy, but the one thing that's lacking is that really explosive pass rusher off the edge. Most of the edges we have, well, all of them really, even Mafe, I think for the most part, has to win with power. They don't just flat out beat tackles off the edge. Mafe more than the rest of that group, but even he, I think power is more his forte. Campbell's a guy that can just flat out beat you, so he would give you something different. And it would almost, if you take Jiahyad Campbell at 18, I just want to prepare you, because I have a feeling the Seahawks are going to have a very, very high grade on this player. And I keep saying this, regardless of position, as much as some of you just are dead set on only taking one or two positions at 18, when they look up at their draft board, when they're on the clock, be it at 18 or a little bit later, if Jiahyad Campbell's sitting there, there's a good chance he's at the top of their board. And that's why I want to prepare you, because it could happen. And if it does, don't think, what are they doing? We don't need a linebacker. Think of it like this. Okay, well, now we don't have to take an edge player tomorrow. And that frees up day 2 for interior offensive line, interior defensive tackle, corner, receiver. Like that's what I would do. Whereas if we go one of those positions in round one, I'm looking at that edge group pretty hard on day 2. Campbell could check both those boxes. He's also a guy that in the event anything should ever happen to Ernest Jones or Tyrese Knight, he could slip into either of those spots and be an upgrade, certainly physically, over Drake Thomas. So he would fit. And to some extent, that's the kind of projection you need to have with anyone that they draft at inside linebacker. It's not going to be a guy that is going to start, most likely. And it's not also just strictly going to be a guy to challenge Drake Thomas to be the third linebacker. If it's a unique enough skill set, it could be someone that is part of the rotation and really helps this team, especially on third downs, nickel, dime packages. And the next one on my list also fits that bill, and that's Carson Schwessinger. And the intriguing thing about him, only a 1-year starter. And if you watch the Edge video yesterday, you heard me talk about Femi Oladejo, who was an off-ball linebacker at UCLA after transferring from Cal. Then they moved him full-time to Edge. And now, that's just the dawn of a new era for Femi. And he's one of my favorite edge players. That's where he belongs. But it also opened an opportunity for Schwessinger to play full-time. Little undersized, 6'2", 225, but today, in the modern NFL, that's more common than the 235, 240-pound guy. This is what PFF says about him in their scouting profile. Schwessinger is light for an NFL linebacker, but his elite processing speed and intelligence give him starter and impact ability as a Mike or Will, even though he only has 1 year as a starter. He does everything well. All his grades are very, very consistent. They're all very high, including his pass rush grade, 90 on PFF. And I know PFF isn't everything, but it does give us a marker. And the thing that I like about Schwessinger, even more so, I think, than Campbell, is he's a guy that screams, third and long. And you've got, especially you're facing a team with maybe 12 or 13 personnel, you got some bigger packages, right? Tight splits. Sometimes McDonald likes to use a third linebacker. And, we saw that early in the season when Jerome Baker, Terrell Dodson were both healthy, Tyrese Knight would be out there sometimes. We saw it with Drake Thomas be out there sometimes. So I think he's a really intriguing dude. But like they said in their draft profile, a guy that can play either spot. So if you have an injury, you have a guy like that with that kind of head on his shoulders that could come in and play for you and be a really, really exciting player. He's a day 2 guy. Someone that's really going to be in demand. He's not going to get out of the second round. But if they have a high enough grade on him, again, if the Seahawks take an inside linebacker with one of their first 5 picks in those first 92, if it doesn't make sense to you, just remember what I said and just say to yourself over and over again, Mike Macdonald must have a plan. Mike Macdonald must have a plan. Mike Macdonald has a role in mind for one of these guys. They're not going to take an inside linebacker in those top 5 picks and just stash him on the bench and just in case there's an injury someday. So there will be a role in mind for one of these guys. Another guy that when I saw him at the Senior Bowl, I was so impressed with him down in Mobile the entire week, and I love his story so much, and that's what screams Seahawk as much as anyone on this list. Demetrius Knight has Seahawk characteristics. He's the biggest dude on this list, 6'2", 245. He's the biggest thumper in this inside linebacker class. But he moves better than his size indicates. Whereas you look at a guy like Danny Stutzman out of Oklahoma, he's 245. There's some questions about some of his short area movement skills. Not with Knight. And surprisingly, for that size, again, he can rush, he can hit, he can cover, he can play Sam or Will. He could be that third linebacker in McDonald's system, but give you a better option, again, than Drake Thomas at Mike should Jones get banged up. And the thing about Demetrius Knight, I talk about Seahawk characteristics. So he transferred twice. He played at a small school, Columbia, I think, in between his first stop and South Carolina. And he wasn't making a bunch of NIL money. And he had a young family, and a child to raise. And so he would literally play games on Saturday, and then go deliver DoorDash after the games sometimes to help make ends meet and help support his family. If that doesn't scream Seahawk to you, and grit and all ball, smart, tough, dependable. Yeah. My next guy, Jack Kaiser, Notre Dame, the oldest player on this list. He'll be 25 years old during the football season, 6'2", 231. Not a lot to say here other than this. Not an elite athlete, but very good short area quickness, good enough athleticism. His 3-cone and 10-yard splitter, excellent. Kind of reminds me of Ben Burr-Kirven. Very sure tackler, plays bigger than his 231 pounds. His PFF coverage grade isn't great, so you think, oh, well, then I don't know if he fits. But, man, I saw some great coverage reps from him in Mobile, including one full squad practice. I think it was on Wednesday with full pads. And he picked off Jalen Milroe. And if you think, well, Milroe struggled in Mobile, that wasn't the case. This wasn't a case of just Milroe throwing it right to him. This was Kaiser kind of playing in zone, sort of baiting Milroe like he was going to come up, and then trailed the tight end down the seam and perfectly dropped, flipped his hips, turned, ball skills, picked the ball off. It was really outstanding. He's a leader. He's a perfect citizen. He's everything that you'd want out of a guy, or everything you would expect out of a guy that comes out of Notre Dame. Jack Kaiser would be, I do think, an upgrade and a little bit bigger than Drake Thomas. And then the last guy on the list, Teddy Buchanan, might be the most fun. There's some holes in his game. He's kind of ranked in that 6th round range because he just doesn't have, you see multiple examples in scouting reports and mentions of just not having a big anchor. He's not a real physical player. What he is an athlete. 6'2", 235, maybe the best overall athlete on this list. He can rush the passer. He can get in the way, and play the run. He's just not going to deliver punishment, and he is going to get eaten up sometimes by physical blockers. But all of his grades, like pass rush, run defense, coverage, they're all mid-70s on PFF across the board. 4.6 40, really fast, 40-inch vertical, 10-foot broad. He's explosive. He is strong in his upper body, at least 26 reps on the bench press. He's a complete cover linebacker that you'll see a lot of references in these scouting reports to should be able to play a third down role as a rookie, and that's kind of what we're looking for, right? But can also be a dynamic pass rusher. So more of a role player, not a guy who's going to challenge to play every day or every Sunday unless there's an injury. But, man, you talk about 6th round, like day 3, like that's phenomenal value for Teddy Buchanan. And I love the way he spells his name. It's just cool. I like it. Now, running back. Very similar, as I said at the top, in that just doesn't seem to be a need, right? Seahawks have Ken Walker Jr., or Kenneth Walker III, sorry. Zach Charbonnet, Kenny McIntosh, who finally got some run at the end of last season and looked like the player we all thought he could be. And then they have George Halani, the rookie last year at Boise State. Big, strong, like the complete package. If it wasn't for injury issues at Boise State, would have probably been a day 2 pick last year. The Seahawks really like him. So there's 4 guys, right? But then you start to kind of peel back the curtain a little bit. Walker in the last year of his deal. And with all that running back depth, how much are you willing to pay him, especially if he has a big year? Is Charbonnet an ideal fit in his own scheme? Or is he more of a gap power guy? And then there's just injuries. Like these guys, it takes a toll. We'll never forget the year that Marshawn Lynch had to get up off his couch and come help in a playoff push. What was that, 2018, 2019? Because all the running backs went down. We had 2-3 years in a row. Certainly Chris Carson and Rashad Penny, like they could never stay healthy. CJ Prosise. We know in Seattle about running back injuries. So there's that. But also this class is so deep. Multiple scouts have said there are over 30 draftable running backs in this class. That's insane. And a lot of starter grades. Some of these guys are going to slip through undrafted because there's so many of them. And you might be able to scoop one up. So I've kind of got, my list kind of goes all the way through the entire draft range, I don't expect them to take one before day 3. I really don't. And depending on where you look, some people have these guys rated higher than others. Some of these guys might go off the board on day 2. And look, if the Seahawks like one enough, although some Seahawks fans might try to burn the VMAC down if they take another second round running back, especially when it's not considered a need right now. But just brace yourself, because you never know what's going to happen when the draft rolls around, right? Damian Martinez, we know him here in the Pacific Northwest. He was really one of the transformative players that turned that Oregon State program around. Size, speed, 6 foot, 232 pounds. He's gone up and down with his weight a little bit. He showed up at the combine lighter, like a lot of these guys do, to try to test better. I actually like him a little bit bigger, because I think even at 232, 235 pounds, at times he was listed at 240 in his career. He plays smaller because he's quick, and I think he's a really good zone scheme fit. Like, he'll put his foot in the ground. He's really decisive. And then when he does decide, like, as you can imagine from his frame, does not shy away from contact. Runs really hard. Not the hardest runner on this list. I think you all know who that is. Hasn't done much in the passing game. Hasn't caught even 20 balls in any given season. But just watching him in drills, watching him at the Senior Bowl, he looked comfortable doing it. Remember, with Kenneth Walker, came out of Michigan State. He wasn't known as a guy that really was that active in the passing game, but we saw what he did last year. And I think we might be seeing an Alvin Kamara type role for him in this Kubiak offense moving forward. And I think we've seen what Walker can do in the pass game. I think Martinez does have that kind of upside, and he's scheme versatile. Cam Scatabo, everybody loves this guy. Who cares about the 4.65 40? He's 5'9", 220 pounds, the hardest runner by far on this list. He is a wrecking ball. 1,700 yards last year, almost 6 yards per carry, 21 touchdowns, and leading Arizona State into the Final Four. He had 45 catches and 3 more touchdowns to add to that last year. Only a 4% drop rate, very sure-handed. We've seen him throw touchdown passes. Again, forget about the 40 time. This is a guy that the reason I have him on this list, do I think they'll take him in the second round? Probably not, because they have other needs. But I can see them grading him high because I think he exemplifies everything Mike Macdonald and Clint Kubiak want to establish identity-wise on offense. Like, if they feel good enough, I guess here's a scenario. Let's say he's still there at 92 because of the lack of top-end speed, and that scares some teams off, and the depth in the class. Teams are busy snapping up these other guys, and they're like, well, we like Scatabo, we like how hard he runs, but we like this other guy better. So maybe he's still there at 92. And maybe the Seahawks feel so good about what they accomplished in those first 4 picks. They've taken care of it. They have a starting guard. They have another defensive lineman. They took care of a big-time wide receiver that they feel good about. Maybe a corner, maybe a starting level corner there too that can push Josh Jobe. Then maybe they'd have the luxury where they look up at their board. Again, they stick to their board and they go, we love this kid. Because here's the other thing. Scatabo might not want to do this, but doesn't he look like a fullback? Right? Clint Kubiak is one of the few remaining offensive coordinators in this league that uses a fullback. Likes to run with 2 backs. Charbonnet kind of fits that mold, but Scatabo fits it more. Like, can you imagine Scatabo, as hard as he runs, not a lot of reps with him lead blocking, but you can see it, can't you? Yeah. Man, I can see it. Especially if he slips to day 3 somehow, just because of that 40 time. Like, I could see them stopping his free fall, rescuing him and saying, we got you, buddy. Oh, by the way, we want you to play fullback. Caleb Johnson, another big back, 6'1", 224, but man, you wouldn't know it watching his tape. Over 1,500 yards, 6.4 yards per carry last year, led the nation with 24 rushing touchdowns, caught 22 balls for almost 200 yards and 2 more touchdowns. He is the ideal outside zone runner. You see it all the time. Iowa ran it. he takes the handoff, he surveys, he discerns, he analyzes, and then he decides where he's going to go, and he puts his foot in the ground, and he gets up to top speed quickly. He is a home run hitter. Probably doesn't fit just because he's going to be drafted before it makes sense for Seattle, but he's such a perfect scheme fit that if things fall a certain way, could happen. Same with DJ Giddens, another guy that really, really fits into the scheme. This is one of Corbin Smith's favorite backs in this class, and Corbin used to coach running backs. Over 1,200 yards the last 2 seasons consecutively. 23 career touchdowns, 60 catches the ball well for a big guy. Needs to improve in pass protection, but you can say that about every running back just about coming out in the draft. But he has the physical want to, like you see it on tape. Like he doesn't struggle sometimes in pass protection because he shies away from contact. That is an issue with some players. Not so much with DJ Giddens. And then Donovan Edwards is just a guy that's a mystery to me. Like, we know what a big recruit he was, and early in his career at Michigan, he looked like he was going to be a star. His sophomore season, he had 1,000 yards in a timeshare with Blake Corum. But then he only had 1,000 yards in the 2 years since then. But then we saw him in the national championship game 2 years ago against the University of Washington. 6 carries, 104 yards. Those 2 long touchdowns put the game out of reach early. And then he has 86 catches for almost 1,000 yards in his career. And that's the thing about Donovan Edwards. He's 5'11", 205. Like, he looks smaller than he is. But one of the first impressions I had at the Senior Bowl in Mobile is at the opening press conference with Jim Nagy. He name-dropped Donovan Edwards. He was talking about the running back class as a whole and the group that ended up in Mobile and how good he thought it was. And he said, even a guy like Donovan Edwards, who hasn't really been on the radar as much the last 2 years, he said, some teams think he's such an accomplished pass catcher, he could play slot receiver in the NFL. And I think that's why. Plus, he's being, like, on most big boards, he's a 6th, 7th round pick on James Foster's big board, who I had on the show a couple weeks ago, and I've been telling you how great that board is. He has him as a priority undrafted free agent. If Donovan Edwards doesn't get drafted, or if he's still there in the 7th round, the Seahawks have those 2 picks, and they haven't taken a running back yet, I could see him being, maybe as much as anyone on this list, a perfect fit, because he would essentially be a guy that can play running back for you, but also receiver. And maybe even long-term, like, that's his role. And they kind of make that out of him. Lots and lots of moldable skills there. And I don't know, I remember hearing Daniel Jeremiah at the Combine talk about how it just didn't seem like the last couple seasons on his tape he had as much juice, and there's no real serious injuries or anything to account for that. You know, some guys, sometimes when their bodies mature, they just get thicker, maybe slow down a little bit. But then he went out at the Combine and looked every bit the athlete you'd expect and hope he would be. So I think Donovan Edwards would really, really fit as a day 3 guy. And man, you get him in the 7th round. Seahawks don't have a 6th round pick right now. You get him with one of those 2 7th rounders. To me, that's a steal. It really, really, really is. So that's where we're at. Let me see what's next on my list for tomorrow. I want to properly preview. Yeah, so we're going to do wide receivers and cornerbacks tomorrow. The pass catchers and the guys that cover them. So look out for that. Follow me on Twitter at Seahawks Forever and Blue Sky at Seahawks Forever. Subscribe to the channel. All the ways you can support it are linked down below. Tell me in the comments what you think of my lists, who you have that I didn't have on my list that you think fits the Seahawks, because I know you guys all have great ideas. I know you guys are studying tape. You guys are throwing names at me sometimes that I haven't studied, and that's always fun for me. I get to go to my database and see if I can find the player and then watch him. That's been a lot of fun. But then tell me why you like that player and why you think he fits the Seahawks. So we'll be back tomorrow with corners and wide receivers. Until then, thanks for watching. I'm Dan. This is Seahawks Forever. Forever and always go Hawks.